What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another video. This one is the mighty Viggen. Lately, I've spent a whole bunch of time trying to learn this thing, how to fly it, and I thought I'd put a realistic mission together. There's not going to be any weapons employment whatsoever today. It's going to be a realistic startup taxi out here at HOTAS base in Georgia. The setting is the 1990s. The Swedes are doing joint exercises with the Georgian forces, which is why you'll see a lot of sort of Soviet-y machinery scattered around here at the moment, along with some NATO stuff. We're going to do a low-level route, which is not going to be very long, but we're going to try and do it in a fairly realistic manner, and I'll show you the route exactly. I've planned it out. And then after that, we're going to fly not far away from here, actually, to a road base where we're going to shoot a visual approach, what I hope is going to be a fairly realistic touch and go there, and then an approach back to base. You know, I learned this aircraft bit by bit, and I try to grasp everything in terms of the basic flying first, in terms of handling, landing, navigating, etc. And then once I'm happy with that, I'll move on to weapons deployment. So that is coming very soon. But for now, let me show you our little route. We're starting at HOTAS. I'm using skyvector.com. You guys can use this as well. It's a really useful tool. Basically, you can do any sort of flight planning here. And it doesn't matter if it's real life simulators, whatever. It's, you know, it's just very useful. Obviously, some of the airfields which we have in the Georgia map are missing here because they don't exist right now. But HOTAS does exist because it's a civil airport as we speak. But obviously, in the game, we have it as a military base. So anyway, we take off from 07 HOTAS, and then we turn left 063, 21 miles out to this lake here, which is where we're going to drop down into the low-level environment. We're going to use 1,500 meters for transit on the QNH. Then we're going to fly a track of 03017 miles. We're going to try and do it at 420 knots. Which is about 7 nautical miles a minute. In the Viggen, obviously it's kilometers an hour, so it's going to be 780 to, well, we'll call it 777 is officially what we need, but we'll call it 780, rounded up. So 17 nautical miles, we know that's going to be 2 and a bit minutes, essentially, out to this waypoint here. And all of this is programmed in the Viggen right now. Once we load the data cartridge, I should say. So from this point, it's a left turn out to 350 nautical miles, so just over 2 minutes. But we essentially follow this valley here. We're following the terrain, so we're simulating that we're going low level, which is essentially the practice for today, maintaining the speed, the height, etc. We come out, so it's a very sharp sort of right turn here in, and then a left again. And then down through the valley, and then we reach the end of the valley out here, and then we climb back up to 1,500. We transit over to this point here, which is where we have our road base in the game, and it's just next to the railway, which is exactly where you see it. But anyway, that's the premise of the mission. After that, we shoot and touch and go, so we're basically heading out here again on a heading of 075, and then it's a slight left turn, and then we'll follow the visual approach chart in the game for the approach into HOTAS, which will take us around, basically shoot a straight in approach, and then we'll employ the thrust reverser on landing, and then backtrack into stand. So that is the mission for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to try and make it sort of as realistic as I can, so follow along and hopefully enjoy the ride. We have 2 good engine starts. You're clear to disconnect the headset. We'll see you on the left with the pin. Thanks a lot. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the cockpit of the mighty Viggen, and let's get this puppy started up. So data truck cartridge is coming in, that's a fuel truck, or rather fire trucks driving away. Main power is on, low pressure fuel valve, high pressure fuel valve, cancel the warning, and let's do a little lights test. Everything is good, all the warning lights are there. Yep. Alright, good to go. So let's get the lights ready. Don't need the formation lights, we need the beacon navigation lights. Generator, start the engine. In the meantime, we've got a couple of Viggens armed with rocket pods taxiing out for departure. And we've got a couple of Georgian Mi-8s flying overhead. The base is alive and breathing. Alright, how are we looking? Engine RPM's looking good, nozzle's coming out, PGT's looking good. Excellent. So, let's close the canopy. Canopy's coming down, arm the ejection seat. Oxygen's flowing. Now let's do stall Warner test. It's working, everything's good. Right, do a little flow from left to right, make sure we haven't forgotten anything. Everything's good. Radius is sufficient for now. Trim's good. Roll center. Everything's good. Right, instruments. So QFE is 1005.5. That is basically reading 0, which, as you can see, unusually, it's a Swedish airplane. It's all a little bit quirky. Of course, it should be at the top. 0 should be at the top normally, but it's not. It's on the bottom here. So it can easily confuse you when you see the needle looking at the top. It's actually half of one full rotation. But anyway, let's set the source to baro, not radar altimeter at the moment. Wind that down to QFE as well. However, the QNH is actually 1011, so we'll need that for transit. Okay, everything else is good. Everything's good. Okay, let's set. Well, first of all, let's load the data cartridge. So let's do input ref Lola 9099, which is sort of an imaginary airfield. Right, should flash for a bit, and then it will swap. There we go. Back to zeros. Now let's go to the runway. Now it's the computer's calculated runway 25 for departure. We don't actually want that. The wind is favoring. It's about 3 knots. Runway 07. That 07 is literally just the left taxi out here and straight into the departure end of that runway. So 07 is what we need, so we swap that across. Let's go to active position. Let's set the master mode switch to nav over there, and that's it. We are good to go. Just last couple of checks here, making sure we haven't forgotten anything yet. Obviously we can't really set the IFF or the squawk code in here. There's not much else to do. Yep, we are good to go. Let's do a flight controls check, making sure everything is okay, which it is. Right, brakes coming off, get the taxi landing light on, and let's start taxiing out. Alright, quick dab on the brakes. Clear to taxi to runway 7. Brakes are working well, and let's taxi out. You'll see a combination of NATO and old Soviet machinery here, because NATO is doing some joint exercises with Georgia here in the 90s. We've got a couple of Viggens there, armed to the teeth. So there's a couple of Hummers there, as you can see as well. And looks like we've got a low-flying Viggen coming in here on the left-hand side. You should see him pass across the field here. There he goes. And then abrupt left turnout. And we got his wingman here on the right side. There he goes. Right, let's get the radar. Let's get the radar working. We'll set 30 miles range for now. Right, clear left, clear right, and let's get going.
Enfield 1-1 to Taisi, you are cleared for takeoff when ready. Climb 300 at QFE 29.70.
All right. So everything is already set here. We've got the radar on. Everything's good. So we'll use the second detent for the afterburner. Let's go max dry on the brakes. All right. So after departure, it'll be left turn 063 outbound. So which is pretty much where we're heading almost now. So let's rock and roll, shall we? Off the brakes. Here comes the second detent. And now we're watching the timeline on the HUD to to reach the poles, which will be close to about 270 kilometers an hour, then a gentle pull. Alright, there it comes. Gentle pull, gentle rotation, just keep it there. Gears coming up, landing lights off. Alright, and let's get the HUD up. So we've got Bravo 1 as the first waypoint. So very slight left turn, just as we were expecting. We'll climb out to about 1,500 meters, and we'll actually set the QNH of 1011 now, which is the regional pressure setting, so which is what we'll need here. And here as well, 1011. Alright, it's looking good. And there you see the waypoint is shown, and we know it's going to be a lake, and that is where we drop down into the low-level environment for a little sortie. So we're keeping it in afterburner at the moment. We're just passing Mach 0.6. There's 1,000 meters. Basically gonna stay just below the cloud base here, so it might just be a little lower than 1,500, but we'll see. Right, we're gonna go into max dry. Here comes 1,500 meters. I'll make a slight left turn, so it's pretty much just at the cloud base, essentially. And now we can engage altitude hold and altitude and attitude hold, essentially, and that is what those green lights here indicate. We're just going to throttle back a little bit. We're going to use a speed of about 420 knots, which is 7 miles a minute, which is also, incidentally, 777 kilometers an hour. But for our purposes, we'll round that up to 780. So anywhere between 780 and 800 will give us quick mass, and that's what we're going to use. And we are coming up on the lake here. So we know from there on it's going to be 03017 miles. So it's 7 miles a minute. We know it's going to be about 2.5 minutes. So we're going to maintain the speed there, as you can see. I'm trying to maintain about 770 odd kilometers an hour. Between 770 and 800, let's call it. So let's drop down into low level. We'll get rid of the autopilot functions, apart from Spark, which is the dampener for all the flight controls, to make sure the airplane's sort of sharp. And we can see on the radar here, this is the little circle, that's actually our waypoint. That's where we're going to drop low level. At this point, we could be doing the smart checks if we were in a more modern aircraft, which would stand for squawk and IFF, which of course we can't do here. So it should switch over to B2, which it has there. And we can see on the central indicator, we see a sort of yellow mark there pointing at us in the right direction. But of course we are going to use terrain, and we don't have the radar altimeter in this aircraft to show us on the HUD exactly what our height is, but we can set the reference to the height we're currently at and use the poles as a reference there. So just gonna throttle up a touch here, especially to get over this ridge. So like I was saying, we would be doing the smart checks, squawk, which we can't set in this airplane, in fact any airplane DCS, the M, which would be magnetic heading on the HUD, which we don't have as well, but we don't need to set it here. Altimetry, set QNH, which we have set. Radio altimeter, which, well, we don't have this airplane. Well, we do actually, but it's not going to show us on the HUD, so it won't make much of a difference, but we can set it there as a reference. Just roll over the top. Okay, just need to throttle up a bit, so we'll actually go into burner slightly. And of course you should be timing as well. And the last thing that I was going to say is T stands for TCAS, which we don't have because this is an old jet. So right, we're going to try and maintain low level. Here we go, back up to 800, so we need to make a little bit of time there, as we know. As we said, this is going to be about 2 and a bit minutes for this leg. And you can actually see it counting down there on the through the kilometers on the gauge on the right hand side. So just going to use terrain here. Obviously, if this was a proper combat environment, we'd be dropping way further down low level and actually using the trees for masking if we could. And in our planning stage, we'd be looking at all sorts of obstacles that we might encounter along the way, such as, for example, various things sticking out of the ground, of which there are plenty, wind turbines and sorts of light poles. And alright, so here we are, we've reached our waypoint 2, we're now switched to waypoint 3, which is going to punch afterburner in as we go around the corner, just not dropping the speed, and we're flying through this valley following this road along for now. So let's recenter the reference height, and as you can see the light poles disappear at low level because we're using the decluttered, the slave mode of the HUD. And now we just follow the terrain. At this point we don't have any pop-up points on this route, or target points, so we're not simulating any attack runs. We're basically just getting used to low level flying in the Viggen, and as you can see we're a bit too fast. They're just going to throttle down a touch. So back down to 800 kilometers an hour. Alright, it is looking good. And the radar is very helpful for depicting where the waypoints are that we're going to. So as you can see, it's dead ahead there, but we actually, even looking at the map, we knew that we're going to have to make this kink, basically left and then a sharp right back in towards that waypoint through the valley, which is what we're going to do. So we're on speed there, 780 kilometers an hour looks about right. So now we're looking at the fuel as well. Obviously this is not a long route, but if it was a long route, you can see the Viggen is quite smart now. It actually calculates real time how much fuel it thinks percentage wise you need to fly your mission based on the waypoints that you have, and it even calculates target points, etc. So this is where the valley splits actually, and we're gonna have to make a left turn here. So we're still Bravo 4, okay. Alright, okay, I believe because we were not within 3 kilometers of that waypoint, because our heading now is supposed to be around 222. So I think we'll have to swap over to it manually. So let's just go Bravo 5 here. So Bravo 5 is there. I mean, we were on the correct route. It just so happens that the waypoint just didn't trigger for an automatic change. Not sure exactly why that's happened, but anyway, that's fine as long as we know where we are. And we can actually increase the range here on the radar just to see where the waypoint is. There you go. Waypoint 5 straight ahead. Now waypoint 5, as we know, is the FARP, or the road base, where we're going to come in and do a little touch and go, after which point we'll continue on back to base, which is actually quite close. Just going to throttle up a touch, back into burner slightly. So the Viggen is quite smart. It actually calculates percentage-wise fuel, how much it thinks you need based on your target points, pop-up points, and all that stuff. So it is extremely smart, and it shows it to you live right there. So you know we only need just under 20%, and we have a hell of a lot more than that. So we know we're good. But of course, you could do some more complex fuel calculations along the way. However, when you're flying super low level, especially combat environment, where you're extremely low, I don't think you'll have time, or much time anyway, to pay attention to that. I mean, obviously, maybe some ballpark figures, but not exact accurate figures. Right, so let's pull up from the low level, as we're flying over these built-up areas now, back to 1,500 meters. Waypoint 5 straight ahead. And we'll set the airplane up, whatever we need to do for a FARP. road base approach. Now, in reality, if you were to read the manual, it would tell you to enter the coordinates and then the runway heading, etc., of that location, which we're not going to do in our particular scenario, entirely because we can actually fly this visually, right? Because if we were to do it by instruments, it would set us up on essentially a B1 point, which is 20 kilometers out, and then an LF point, which is 10 kilometers closer in, but still, you're basically flying a gigantic approach in towards your landing location, right? Which doesn't really make sense if you want to overfly it first and have a look at it in terms of how it's situated, how it looks, how the terrain looks, just so you're aware of where you're actually landing at, what you're looking at, because you're not looking at a runway, you're looking at a road, right? So ideally, I think you should be overflying it first, just having a look at it and making sure it's all, you know, like you expect. Now, I don't know how they did it officially. I can't find any materials on how it's actually done. But just so whilst we're getting close here, let's engage altitude hold. Let's actually slow down. We'll put the auto throttle in. The auto throttle in Viggen essentially has, well, a mode depending on whether gear up or gear is down. If the gear is up, it'll set 550 kilometers an hour, which is very helpful for flying approaches, which is what it's going to do now. So it'll just gently slow us down in flight idle. What we're going to do is we're going to set the QFE. Now the QFE is actually not going to be exact. It's a little bit higher up than the airfield. So actually, I think it's a little lower down than the airfield. So we're going to set 1005 there. I'm going to set 1005 here, and that should be, give or take, what we need. Now, let's see where we are then. So what we want to do is we essentially want to fly a circuit onto the landing road, or landing side of the road, or the runway, the FARP. So let's first of all disconnect the autopilot. We'll drop a little bit low level here. Now we know that so first of all, the airfield is just there for reference. We're coming in. We're going to drop down to 300 meters on the altimeter of the QFE, so it's 300 meters above ground, and then we'll fly a circuit. Now, it's going to be a little bit unusual in the sense we're not going to slow down and drop the gear immediately and get down to landing speed like you would in an F-18 flying a carrier approach, or most other jets for that matter when you're flying downwind. We're actually going to come in a little bit faster, and the problem is that this thing requires a hell of a lot of thrust when it's behind the drag curve. From testing. Now, I can't find any official information about how they actually did these landings and road bases. I mean, yes, you can use the instrument approach essentially to guide you to it from 20 kilometers away, as some of you Viggen pilots will know. However, that, like I say, is not particularly useful if the weather is very good like this. Now, if the weather wasn't good, we wanted to fly sort of instrument-ish approach down to the runway where we couldn't really fly a circuit very easily, then I would understand and I would agree. But in our case, what we're doing right now is actually we're flying downwind initially, and so the road base is right there. I know you guys might not be able to pick it up at the moment, but because well, I made it, I know where it is. It's right there at 9 o'clock. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna drop down to 300 meters, and we're gonna come in essentially here at 550 kilometers an hour, overfly it just off to the side so we get a good feel for the landing zone, or we understand where it is and how it all looks like. And then after that point, actually one thing I need to do is prepare the plate for Kutaisi inbound, so we pick up, because we're not going to have enough time after our little go around. Where is Kutaisi? Come on, Kutaisi, hurry up. There it is. Right, there's Kutaisi, right. Because we'll be coming in from the west, so we'll be looking for that point there. Right, anyway. So, looking for 300, we're currently 400. Road base is off, just left-hand side here. And there's road posts on both sides to block it off. As you can see, there's some sort of markers off to the side as well to indicate that it's a runway. So might have dropped a little low here actually, 250. Let's just climb up slightly to 300. So maintaining just over 500 kilometers an hour here. We're doing this on purpose, and you'll see why in a second. So, and there's 300. I'll just level it off there. Set the reference altitude. So there is our FARPs. There's, you know, it's protected on both sides by road posts. And there it is, a couple of Viggens there. It's an MI8. And we're going to do a normal brake. It's heading 075 over here, so we're going to do the reciprocal heading at about 2G. So we'll pull back around 2G, and we're going to roll out on a heading of 255. And 255 there, we'll start configuring a little bit later. Now, normally most aircraft you'd want to slow right down to your, get the flaps out, get the landing gear out, get the approach speed, everything kind of sorted before, right? But in the Viggen, you don't want to do that because you need a hell of a lot of thrust. When this thing is behind the drag curve, which it will be at its approach speed, it needs a lot of thrust, right? And it just doesn't work that well. So there's 255. We'll roll out. We'll disengage the auto throttle now. So we've got manual thrust. Okay, so we are parallel to the road base now. Let's get the gear out. 600 kilometers an hour is max speed. Let's get the HUD and the landing lights on. So now we're coming in and we're starting our turn here. And now you want to maintain the speed a lot higher than you think you would normally. So approach speed is just under 300 kilometers an hour. Call it around 280 kilometers an hour. And you'll need a lot. So now look, we're actually max dry right now, and we're just above 300 still. So because we're descending, it's not too bad, but we essentially need max dry thrust right now to maintain a speed of just over 300 kilometers an hour in the turn, and that is without actually one thing we need to do is go into PO mode now for the visual landing on the mass mode, which we have done. Okay, that's just over 300 kilometers an hour, so I recommend keeping it a little high for your turn there, and then as you roll out you can start decreasing it, getting it down to your approach speed, what you actually need. The Viggen is quite helpful in that you see a little fin there on top of the velocity vector. Once that essentially tells you your speed, once it touches the velocity vector right there, like it is just about now, there you go, you know you're perfectly on speed, right? So you want to maintain it there. So you don't even have to look at your airspeed indicator or your AOA, which you're trying to maintain about 12 degrees. AOA, which you are there just left of the HUD, you can see that. So this is going to be a touch and go, so we're just going to kill the thrust. Now see, the flight path vector is now just turned into a VSI essentially. Kill the thrust. There we go. Full thrust. Get it up. Rotate gently, 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 gently. Gears coming up. And lights off. HUD up. Perfect. Alright, that was a good touch and go. This is a good approach, good circuit, I like it. So now we're looking for our approach reference point. Obviously we'd be talking to ATC, but I'm not going to do that here right now, just because it's a bit limited in DCS. So we are looking for this point on the left hand side. It's the DME 8.5 arc from the airport essentially. We're going to slow down to 550 kilometers an hour, which we are at the moment. We'll set the auto throttle, that's going to do it for us. We'll level off around about here, actually 700 meters, probably even a little high. So that approach point should be right here pretty much. I believe that's where the stream leaves the river, which is right there. So we're just next to it. From here on we're supposed to be flying heading of 054. And because we're slightly to the right of it, I'm actually just going to correct that. So 054 from here on should work out pretty nicely. There's the runway. We'll kill the thrust, get the gear down, get the landing lights. And essentially we should be able to line up with the runway from here. Yeah, landing lights are on. Put the HUD back down. Now, as you can see, it said you should fly up to that waypoint first, and then 068 inbound. That's where the river is, essentially this kink in the river here. So we're pretty much perfect. That's 058 there. So yeah, you roll out pretty much here. So that's the visual approach diagram that a lot of Russian and I suppose Soviet airports or air bases have used. Just trim it out nicely. And we'll get down to approach speed there. Just under 300 kilometers an hour. Pitch up a little. There we go, it's looking good. The Viggen is a very stable airplane, although it does shake a little bit and buff it. Where at low speed it sort of creates the impression or the illusion that you might be stalling, but I guess that's just the way it is and it's normal. And as a matter of fact, there is a 15-degree alpha approach that you can fly, which is allowed for super short landings, which we're not actually trying at the moment. We're supposed to be keeping it closer to 12. So now we'll just decrease the rate of descent slightly. Kill the thrust. Alright, reverser is active. Go max dry. Gently apply the brakes. Gently apply the brakes. Gently, 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 gently. Coming to a stop here. Kill the thrust reverser. Okay. And now we shall backtrack.
Enfield 1-1. Taxi to parking area.
The turning radius of this thing is not particularly impressive, I must admit, especially for an aircraft that's supposed to be based on these off-airfield locations where turning room could be pretty tight. It's actually somewhat not very good, I would say. Alright, let's taxi back. So, radar. Let's set the switch back to BER. That turns the radar off. And gets rid of the HUD as well, which we don't need anymore. And now it's just a case of taxiing back to stand. So there you go. I hope you guys have enjoyed this little sortie. For me, I always quite like to do some sort of realistic flying and learn the aircraft bit by bit. So I haven't even, learned anything about the weapons employment, if I'm honest. At this point, I've just been practicing takeoff, landing, navigation, operating on road bases, just getting the basics right for flying the Viggen. And then after that, I'll start getting into weapons employment, and hopefully we'll get some realistic missions. Let's just turn the taxi light off here so we don't blind the ground crew. And we'll try and swing it out for them so they can push us back in. So we'll try and get a little closer to this side. Hopefully, nice and careful. Nice and careful. Just taxi by. Okay. Alright, start swinging it out. Just use a bit of brakes there to try and squeeze by. Now this is not really ideal, especially with the jet blast behind, but we should be able to make it here. This is good. Keep it going. Little Isaac parked up next to a generator here. I love the reflection on the glass. How cool is that? Alright, let's keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. And stop. Alright. Ground crew will push us in from here, I think. Let's get the canopy open. Master caution. Disarm that. Turn off the oxygen. Yeah, so let's kill that. Let's kill that. Get rid of that. Generator, kill everything. Yeah, it's pretty brutal the way you kill all the power in the Viggen, but I mean, apparently it says you should do it that way, so who am I to judge? Get all the lights and everything off. Get everything back to normal. Main power's off. Yeah, everything's coming off. Perfect. Well, that's it from me, folks. That's the end of the video. And if there's any more Viggen content specifically that you want to see, because I'll be diving into some of the more complex systems, obviously weapons deployment, etc. If there's anything in particular that you guys are interested in seeing, or some sort of mission potentially, because I still need to create some interesting stuff for the Viggen, then please, by all means, make sure to comment that down below, and hopefully I will make it happen. So with that said, please make sure to smash the living daylight out the like button and subscribe for future videos, and hopefully I'll catch you then. Adios.